Dark Zero. The Horror Network.
Hey, Reese.
Who's here? It's the brilliant detective who sealed my brutish fate. Remember this, Hobbs? What goes around really goes around.
You have a safe trip, yeah?
Is on my side.
Go ahead! Light up my light! Criminals like Reese, they kill a few people, somehow it ain't their fault. Or what took place tonight is the consequences of what I do.
You're home early today.
For a change.
Detective John Hobbs wants to uncover the truth.
What does Azazel mean? Now, my dictionary says that evil spirit of the wilderness.
Walk away, Mr. Hobbs.
But nothing in this world
Is on my side.
can help him solve this case.
There are angels. Some of these angels were cast down, and a few of the fallen were punished by being deprived of form.
Come on, get out of here.
And each touch
And at the execution, did he try and touch you?
Yeah, he did, actually.
passes the soul of a killer into someone new.
Well, I believe what I see, and I'm still trying to get my mind around what I just saw.
Some things, pal, you shouldn't know.
I know you, Hobbs.
Put the gun down.
I know who you are.
Put the gun down!
Time is on my side. Hey, pal.
My work is based upon evidence.
And aren't your facts resistant to normal interpretation?
Hey, Hobbs.
You leave my family alone.
I'm still having fun.
Denzel Washington,
How do we fight him? Is it even possible?
I believe it is.
John Goodman,
Jonesy, you know I didn't do this.
I know it, Hobbs.
Donald Sutherland,
I know you know more than you're saying.
Haven't you done enough, huh?
Time is on my side.
Fallen.
Before we officially get started today, I just want to take a quick second to directly thank the incredibly loyal followers of the Dark Zero Horror Network.
Yes,
Your
absolutely.
continued support of these explorations really just means everything to us. And if you are new here or you're just returning for another round of analysis, please remember to like and subscribe to support the network.
It genuinely helps us keep bringing these deep dives to you.
It really does. All right, let's get into the material. I'm Kevin.
And I'm Sarah.
Welcome, everyone. Today, we are pulling apart the anatomy of a film that has essentially lived two entirely different lives. We're taking a deep dive into the 1998 supernatural thriller, Fallen.
It's a perfect subject for us, really, especially when you look at the massive gulf between its initial critical reception in the late 90s and the reverence it commands in cult cinema circles today.
Totally. And to figure out how that shift happened, we are pulling from a really eclectic stack of sources. We've got a fantastic retro television interview with Denzel Washington, a vintage, slightly controversial review from the legendary film critic Roger Ebert, and some excellent retrospective analysis from YouTube channels like Joe Blow Horror, FearShop.com, Screen Stars, and JB's Spooky Review.
We're also looking at some hard box office stats from Wikipedia. And
Oh, wait, I have to issue a quick public service announcement for anyone who gets inspired to do a rewatch tonight.
Oh, please do. The collateral damage we found in our research for this was highly entertaining.
Right, so if you go looking for Fallen on streaming, make sure you click on the right one. Because while going through our sources, we stumbled onto this sprawling 15-page blog post from a writer at a site called The Wordy Habitat.
It was amazing.
She is just ruthlessly tearing apart a movie called Fallen. But she's writing in all caps, furious about bad CGI, cliche teenage angst, a girl named Luce, and a golden-haired boy named Daniel.
Yeah, she is reviewing the teen romance adaptation of the Lauren Kate book series, the one about fallen angels at a spooky reform school called Sword and Cross.
Her sheer frustration over the love triangle mechanics was palpable.
It really was, but it highlights a very important distinction for you, the listener. We are strictly diving into the gritty, R-rated 1998 detective thriller today.
Exactly. We are leaving the supernatural teen romance at the door.
100%.
So our mission today is to uncover how this specific 1998 Denzel Washington vehicle, which, let's be honest, objectively tanked at the box office, managed to survive, build this incredible cult following, and age into a beloved classic.
And we are also going to dissect the brilliantly unique, contagious mechanics of its body-hopping villain.
Which is the best part. Now, if you're listening to this, you likely already know the foundational setup.
Right.
You know, the film kicks off with Detective John Hobbs watching the unhinged serial killer Edgar Reese, played brilliantly by Elias Koteas, get executed in the gas chamber.
And you know that the execution doesn't stop the killings, because the real threat is Azazel, an ancient demon who passes from person to person through a simple touch.
What's wild to consider is how differently that premise could have been handled given the Hollywood landscape of the late 90s.
Completely.
One of our sources, JB's Spooky Review, dug up the fact that Arnold Schwarzenegger was actually heavily considered for the role of Detective Hobbs.
Which would have completely altered the DNA of the film.
Completely.
If you put Schwarzenegger in that role, the nuance just evaporates. It becomes an action vehicle. He probably ends up shooting the demon with a rocket launcher.
Right. But the character of Hobbs requires a much more delicate psychological touch. The script takes the time to establish him not as an unstoppable action star, but as a deeply grounded, fundamentally decent guy.
Yes. We see him living with his intellectually disabled brother Art and helping raise his young nephew Sam. He's cocky, sure, but he's anchored in reality.
And that fundamental decency is exactly what makes the central conflict work. The YouTube reviewers we source, particularly Joblo, really praise Denzel's performance for radiating this inherent goodness.
You anchor yourself to him because he feels like a moral compass in a decaying world.
Exactly. But not everyone saw that as a positive. Roger Ebert actually docked the film for that exact reason.
Ebert's 1998 critique is fascinating because it's so specific to the rules of the genre. He viewed Fallen essentially as a noir film.
Okay.
And his argument was that in a classic noir, the protagonist needs to possess a core of guilt or shame. They need a fatal flaw that makes them almost deserving of the grim existential fate coming their way.
I see.
Yeah, Ebert felt Washington was simply too sunny and hopeful. He argued that Hobbs didn't internalize the evil around him the way a classic noir anti-hero like Humphrey Bogart or Robert Mitchum would have.
I understand Ebert's purist view of noir there, but I actually think he misses the point of the tragedy in this specific story. Well, if Hobbs was already a corrupt, guilty cop, the demon breaking him wouldn't carry the same weight. It's his sunny, hopeful disposition, his belief that the system works, and that good triumphs that makes his ultimate collision with ancient evil so devastating for you to watch.
That's a really good point. And Washington's subtle approach to the character was very deliberate. In this incredible retro interview he did with WFAA television, right around the time of the release, he gets very candid about his acting process.
I loved that interview.
Right. The interviewer praises how effortless he seems on screen, and Washington admits that he had actually been toying with the idea of pushing a little harder in his performances. He felt maybe he wasn't doing enough.
But then he talks about watching Spencer Tracy. He calls Tracy the absolute master of simply relaxing and, more importantly, listening on screen.
Yes, listening.
Washington realized that overacting, pushing harder, would completely ruin the quiet observation required for a detective role.
That concept of listening as an active performance choice is profound. He mentions that for him, the best acting stems from observing real people.
Yeah, he talked about his early days in college, doing heavy plays like Othello or The Emperor Jones, and walking 40 blocks home through New York City, just running lines and watching how strangers interacted.
But he brings up this tragic irony of celebrity. Once you achieve his level of fame, it becomes virtually impossible to sit quietly in a corner and observe the world, because the world is entirely focused on observing you.
You can really see that Tracy-esque restraint in how he plays Hobbs, though. He is always watching the chaos around him. Oh, and my absolute favorite detail from that WFAA interview.
The Exorcist thing.
Yes. The interviewer asks if he gets scared by horror movies.
Yeah.
Washington laughs and admits he hadn't watched a single horror film since The Exorcist.
Which is amazing.
He said that movie terrified him so deeply he slept with the lights on for 3 days, and he basically swore off the entire genre.
The irony there is staggering, considering director Gregory Hoblit specifically referenced The Exorcist, along with Rosemary's Baby and The Omen, as the primary tonal blueprints for Fallen.
Right. He accidentally wandered back into the exact genre that traumatized him.
He really did.
And let's get into the mechanics of that trauma, because Azazel is such an unconventionally terrifying antagonist. The demon speaks Syrian Aramaic. It uses the Rolling Stones' "Time Is On My Side" as a taunting calling card, and most importantly, it moves entirely through touch.
It's a brilliant literalization of a psychological concept. The screenwriter, Nicholas Kazan, spent 3 years refining this script. And he said the entire premise stemmed from the idea of evil as a contagion.
A contagion, right.
Yeah. If you think about your own daily routine, think about how easily a bad mood is transferred. Someone aggressively cuts you off in traffic, your adrenaline spikes, you carry that frustration into a coffee shop and snap at a barista, and then that barista carries that negativity to their next customer.
It's a chain reaction.
Exactly. Kazan took that very grounded human experience of contagious negativity and amplified it into a demonic force.
When you look at the film through that lens of contagion, the camera work suddenly makes so much sense. All those chaotic, roaming POV shots through the crowded Philadelphia streets aren't just for style. They're showing you the infection spreading in real time.
And director Gregory Hoblit immediately grasped the weight of that metaphor. When Hoblit first read Kazan's script, he was so creatively galvanized that he instantly faxed Kazan and the producer 60 pages of single-line notes.
60 pages?
60 pages of notes for a script he actually liked. That speaks to an obsessive level of meticulousness.
It really does. And you see that meticulousness manifest physically in the actors who get possessed. We have to talk about the finger twitch rule.
Oh, this is one of the coolest production secrets we found. Going back to that opening execution scene, Elias Koteas made a very subtle, unscripted actor's choice.
Right. As the possessed serial killer is walking to the gas chamber, Koteas did this strange, unnatural, rhythmic twitch with his ring finger. It wasn't in the stage directions at all.
But Hoblit loved it. He recognized instantly that it provided a physical anchor for a villain that constantly changes faces.
So smart.
So he instituted a strict rule on set. Every single actor who becomes a host for Azazel later in the film, whether it's James Gandolfini, Robert Joy, or John Goodman, they all had to perfectly mimic that exact same off-kilter finger twitch.
It creates this subconscious breadcrumb trail for you as a viewer. You might not consciously register the finger moving right away, but your brain recognizes that the cadence of the body language is wrong. It tells you the evil is present before the character even speaks.
And speaking of the evil being present, we really need to unpack the philosophical architecture of the film, because this script goes far beyond standard late 90s thriller tropes.
Definitely.
The YouTube channel fearshop.com made an incredibly astute observation about the protagonist's name, John Hobbs.
When I read this in our research, it completely rewired how I view the movie. The name is a deliberate mashed-up reference to 2 opposing 17th century philosophers, Thomas Hobbes and John Locke.
Exactly. If you remember your college philosophy classes, Thomas Hobbes essentially argued that the natural state of humanity is nasty, brutish, and short.
Right.
He believed humans are inherently selfish, violent, and driven by base desires, requiring strict, overbearing societal constraints to keep us from destroying each other.
A very bleak view.
Very. On the other side of the spectrum, you have John Locke, who argued that humans are inherently rational, tolerant, and capable of peaceful coexistence and self-governance.
So Detective John Hobbes literally embodies this philosophical tug-of-war in his name. He is the John Locke of the story, a fundamentally decent, rational man trying to uphold the law and protect his family.
Yes.
And he is forced into a collision course with the Thomas Hobbes view of the world. An ancient, contagious evil that brings out the absolute worst, most selfish, violent tendencies in every human it touches.
The entire narrative is asking you, the viewer, to decide which philosopher is ultimately right. When the social contract breaks down, when a supernatural force strips away our polite societal norms with a simple touch, do we default to Locke's rationality or Hobbes's brutality?
It's heavy, heavy stuff, and the aesthetic of the film completely supports that grim philosophical weight. They opted for a suffocating atmosphere over cheap, momentary shocks.
It really leans heavily into that perpetually rainy, decaying urban aesthetic that David Fincher popularized with C. Pivison.
They grounded the supernatural elements by utilizing highly authentic, moody locations. Those opening scenes weren't built on a Hollywood soundstage. They were shot inside Holmesburg Prison in Philadelphia, which had just closed its doors in 1996.
The institutional dread you feel watching those scenes is baked right into the concrete. And moving the climax to the desolate New Jersey Pine Barrens strips away the crowded paranoia of the city and replaces it with a profound, quiet isolation.
The tension they built through that atmosphere was so effective that it actually led to an unintended jump scare during a test screening.
This is such a great story.
Right. So there's a scene where Hobbes goes out to the abandoned Milano cabin to look for clues in the basement. In the original cut, the scene is a total slow burn. It's dead quiet. He just searches, finds a specific book, and leaves.
It was entirely about psychological dread.
Right. But the audience at this test screening was wound so incredibly tight by the atmosphere that when someone in the theater randomly got up to use the restroom and let the heavy theater door slam shut behind them, the entire crowd jumped out of their seats.
They were just that on edge.
Exactly. The Warner Bros. Executives were sitting in the back, and they saw this massive visceral reaction. They loved the jolt so much that they ordered Hoblet and the crew to go back, set up the basement again, and film an actual intentional jump scare.
Which ended up being a loud crash of dropping books, right?
Yes, just to artificially recreate the feeling of that theater door slamming.
It perfectly illustrates the tension between a director trying to craft a slow-burn philosophical thriller and a studio looking for visceral audience reactions.
Totally.
And honestly, that studio anxiety makes sense when you look at the absolute bloodbath that was the January 1998 box office.
We have to address the elephant in the room. This movie was a spectacular commercial failure upon release. It carried a massive $46 million budget, which was huge for an R-rated thriller at the time.
Very huge.
And it only managed to scrape together $25.2 million worldwide.
It was a victim of catastrophic timing. January has always been considered a dumping ground for studios to burn off movies they don't know how to market. But in 1998, January belonged to James Cameron. Fallen opened during the 5th weekend of Titanic.
You can't compete with that. Titanic wasn't just a movie, it was a cultural monopoly. It held the #1 spot for 16 consecutive weeks.
Yeah.
On the specific weekend Fallen debuted, Titanic casually pulled in another $36 million. And if you weren't watching the boat sink, you were probably watching Good Will Hunting, which had just expanded into wide release and was hoovering up all the critical buzz and Oscar momentum.
Fallen simply got crushed under the weight of those two juggernauts.
It really did.
The critics certainly didn't help it find oxygen either. Variety dismissed the plot as convoluted, and if you look at Rotten Tomatoes today, the critic score sits at a rather dismal 40%. However, the audience score is holding strong at 72%.
Which proves the central thesis of the villain. Time really was on its side. Unshackled from the impossible box office expectations of 1998, it found its audience on DVD and cable, cementing its legacy.
It's even influencing modern pop culture. One of our sources from Screen Stars pointed out that Marvel's Loki series on Disney Plus paid direct visual homage to Fallen.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, if you watch episode 2 of Loki, there's a sequence where a fugitive variant moves through a crowded big box store, possessing different humans by touching them, hopping from body to body to taunt the hero. It is a one-to-one recreation of the famous street sequence in Fallen.
It proves how sticky Kazan's concept of a contagious villain remains. Which brings us to the climax of the film.
Yes, and if you know the movie, you know we are about to dive into one of the bleakest, most gut-punching finales in mainstream 90s cinema.
It is an absolute masterclass in subverting audience expectations. Let's look at the mechanics of the trap Hobbs tries to set. Through his investigation, he finally isolates the demon's one true vulnerability.
Right. If Azazel is expelled from a human host, meaning the host body dies, the spirit is forced outside. And outside a host, it can only survive for the exact duration of a single breath before it dissipates and dies permanently.
It has to jump immediately or it ceases to exist. So Hobbs uses that rule against it. He lures Azazel back to the Milano cabin in the Pine Barrens, deliberately isolating them miles away from civilization.
But the plan goes horribly wrong when Hobbs's partner, Jonesy, played by John Goodman, shows up.
And Jonesy already has the finger twitch. He's possessed.
The betrayal in that moment is devastating. The physical manifestation of your trust your partner has been hollowed out by the ancient evil you're fighting.
Hobbs is trapped in an impossible logic puzzle. If he shoots Jonesy to stop the demon, Azazel will instantly leave Jonesy's dying body and possess Hobbs. But he pulls the trigger anyway. He shoots his friend.
Which, on the surface, looks like a fatal tactical error. He just invited the demon in.
But then Hobbs reveals the depths of his sacrifice. He reveals that the cigarette he's been smoking is laced with the exact same lethal poison Azazel used to murder his brother Art earlier in the film.
Hobbs has already poisoned himself.
The logic is dark but airtight. He kills Jonesy, Azazel jumps into Hobbs, the poison kills Hobbs a few minutes later, and because they are completely alone in the frozen wilderness with no other humans around to touch Azazel, will die in the air after a single breath.
As the reviewer from JB's Spooky Review dryly noted, It's the most extreme anti-smoking PSA ever committed to film.
That is pretty funny.
But structurally, it fits the classic hero's journey perfectly. Hobbs, the fundamentally decent man, sacrifices his own life to trap the evil and save humanity.
And if this were any other 90s thriller, that's where the music would swell and the credits would roll. But Fallen refuses to give you that closure.
It really does.
Just as the poisoned Hobbs takes his final breath and dies in the snow, Azazel's spirit slits out of his body. The camera pans down, and we see a stray cat crawling out from beneath the floorboards of the cabin. The demon simply touches the cat, possesses it, and survives.
It is a massive subversion of the cinematic rules audiences had been trained to expect. In 1998, you bought a ticket with the implicit promise that the good guy would win. Fallen rejects that premise entirely.
It argues that morality, sacrifice, and fundamental decency are ultimately no match for an evil that is ancient, adaptable, and infinitely patient.
Thomas Hobbes wins the philosophical debate over John Locke.
And it completely recontextualizes the 2 hours you just watched. Think about the very opening seconds of the film. You hear Denzel Washington's voiceover say, "I want to tell you about the time I almost died." For the entire runtime, you operate under the assumption that John Hobbs survived and is narrating this story from the future. But in those final moments when the demon enters the cat, the voiceover returns. And the horrific realization washes over you. It wasn't Hobbs talking, it was Azazel the whole time, using Hobbs's voice, mocking the hero's failure.
It is deeply chilling. And Hoblet brilliantly caps that realization by rolling the credits to the Rolling Stones' Sympathy for the Devil. It leaves the audience swimming in this profound, unresolved unease.
Which brings us back to the core question. Why does a movie that failed so spectacularly in theaters in 1998 hold up so well today? I think it's because Fallen forces you to reconsider the shape of your fears.
Absolutely.
It reminds you that the most dangerous threats aren't external monsters with chainsaws. The threat is ancient, it's invisible, and it could be sitting across from you right now wearing the face of your best friend.
It makes you hyper-aware of your environment. It demands that you question the unseen forces and inherited negativity that might be quietly dictating your actions.
And that leads us to a final, lingering thought to leave you with today. Kazan's script literalizes the idea of evil as a contagion.
Right.
If corruption, malice, or just pure destructive negativity can be passed along as easily as a brief touch on a crowded sidewalk, how do you build defenses against it? We live in a society that absolutely requires us to connect, to interact, to constantly engage with strangers just to function.
If the contagion is always moving, are you ever truly safe?
Or are we all just one mundane interaction, one brush of shoulders on a subway car away from letting the demon in?
It's a question of where you draw your boundaries in a world that demands constant connection.
Definitely something to chew on the next time you find yourself in a crowded room. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Fallen. Keep questioning the world around you, keep exploring, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.